Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to yet another edition of Truth to Power. My name is Faraz Patel. I will be in your company for the next 45 to 50 minutes. Well, earlier this month, Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi published the new minimum wage in South Africa. Now, the minister had said that the national minimum wage will now be at 21 Rand 69 starting from March the 1st. Well, this is a historic announcement, as this gives, for example, farm workers, domestic workers, and workers employed on an expanded public works program to have that entitled minimum wage. Well, to discuss this, later on, I will be joined by SAFTU Secretary General Zwelenzima Vavi. By joining me to kickstart the conversation, I have economic analyst Miyelani Mkhabela. Miyelani, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on Truth to Power.
Thanks, and viewers at home.
Miyelani, I just before we discuss obviously the minimum wage, earlier on obviously we saw that the unemployment stats had come out, and once again it paints a dark picture of what is going on. Now, I know last year in an article on IOL, you had spoken about the contraction, and of course it has to get worse before it gets better. And this was an article that you wrote last year in March. Just give the viewers an idea of what you forecast immediately when President Cyril Ramaphosa had announced that the country was going into the lockdown.
So our expectations were that looking at the country not being ready with technology, and at the same time the country not really having corporates that might have adapted into business continuity management systems and principles, we expected that that will give a challenge to a lot of companies. Looking at South Africa being an economy that is, led by mining, manufacturing, and other sectors that are dependent on physical people to be going to work. So we expected that that will really cause a problem. And extending to that, looking at your tourism industry, looking on the sports, the whole sports and tourism industry businesses, and in contact banking were supposed to be impacted deeply. So our projections were that it will cost the country almost around 1.5 to 2.6 million jobs. That was then, it was around March 2020, and then we had to look on the numbers that were brought by the Statistics South Africa to the market, which, in a general understanding, you will understand that some of the figures were not really included in that. It is more people that might have lost jobs, even more than 3 million jobs that were lost. But the statistics is something that we can probably throw probabilities we can reference on, which the 2.2 million that was reported. But we are going to continue to be having challenges with regard to jobs, because complexities of COVID-19 are increasing or exponentially increasing in the market. And the companies that in the first 3 months managed to continue with COVID challenges, in the 6 months, after 6 months, you find that every 4 to 5 months, companies will be having problems even in the next year or up until 2023. When we manage COVID-19 in time, that will really minimize. But we don't have companies that are creating jobs at the level that is expected to close the gaps. And then in that 2.2 million jobs that was lost, you will expect the country to be creating around 109,000 jobs a month. And that wouldn't really happen in the time of a crisis. We are just increasingly losing jobs as opposed to be creating jobs. Yeah. So that will be a problem that we will face in the short to medium up until we manage. But as a developing economy, you will as well find that developed economies will prioritize in creating jobs in their own countries, creating all these manufacturing centers, smart industries and smart factories in their own sectors, and that will lead to them managing jobs in their own countries, and then make African countries and other developing economies to be consuming those products. So it will really be a challenge, because we are not even ready. Even if we can have plans, but our plans, who is going to finance our plans? Each and everyone is prioritizing his own, economy and all like their own, like families during this time. So it will be difficult for South Africa, west to Nigeria, west to like some of the east, like countries like Rwanda and Kenya, because the expectation in terms of foreign direct investment, it has to be lower now.
Miyelani, as we speak, of course, the fourth quarter, it was 7.2 million, and compared to the 6.5 in the previous 3 months or the previous quarter too, that is a massive jump, isn't it? But what's interesting, Miyelani, is you spoke about, obviously, the smart economy, and just how important now is the fourth industrial revolution in sort of kickstarting that smart economy.
Look, the fourth industrial revolution for an industrial economy like South Africa is not really going to add anything attractive, because you are going to be transitioning to a capital intensive industrial system, whereby you are going to prioritize on artificial intelligence systems and robotics, and that will be much on investing in capital or in equipment or manufacturing technologies, as opposed to labor intensive types of industries. And that will really make the South African economy to continue to bleed jobs. So it's not really an attractive system for African economies. Just if I give you an example, now that we are reporting around 7.2 million jobs, or like 7.2 million unemployment. So if you look at that, if you activate or you start the fourth industrial revolution, and later in 2025 the fifth industrial revolution, that will be taking a lot of jobs, because you are going to be replacing people with robots. And looking at, let's say, one robot is able to replace about 5 to 7 people. So, and the robots can be able to work for 24 hours. When you look on the agricultural sector, we have tractors that now can operate for almost 18 hours to 20 hours, as opposed to tractors that were used at the past that could work for almost 10 to 12 hours. So the increase in the use of tractors a day will really as well be impactful in the sectors that we expected them to be taking as well a lot of people. So, looking at countries like your Belgium, looking at countries like your Japan, China, and Germany, they are going to benefit. So, because they are creating these robots, so the manufacturing sector that is creating these robots is going to be making jobs for these people, and they will shift their lower employees or their lower job candidates to these industrial sectors, or to the smart factories and these smart like industries. And then you find that like the direct manufacturing industry that is innovating, it will be high-tech professionals that are trained for that. But none of the African countries is doing that. So when you look at South Africa, who is manufacturing robots for us, we are going to be importing that. So anything that will be importing, we are creating jobs for those countries. And it looks very attractive because people talk about it without even understanding, when you are an expert that is short-sighted with a critical economy, around probabilities and statistics about human capital, it becomes a problem, because in the grandstanding discussions that people get into, they are misled by the like the European documents that they might be reading, and not really inbounding their market, or forgetting that they are in Africa, and such economies are not really producing those equipments that they are talking about. It just get to be a nice discussion, or a nice article that will be read by a lot of people, but it's not gonna really add any value to the economies that we are operating at, because we are a dependent economy. We really need to still develop our industries. Then when industries are developed, then when we speak about the fourth industrial revolution, the unions will know that fourth industrial revolution is adding to their employees. So immediately when unions are not gonna be happy with the fourth industrial revolution, it will happen in Africa. It's really not gonna be nice. You remember the Standard Bank's scenario when they thought it's a very nice thing to do the fourth industrial revolution, but that had led to a bleeding in terms of like lower and some of the random jobs, and we call that fourth industrial revolution when it is wrongly implemented, because you really need to look at the dynamics or the pastel and the SWOT analysis in your own economy or in the sectors that you want to implement that. And after having that understanding, with really advice from strategists that understand the markets in terms of what will be lost and what will be gained, and who will benefit from all such innovation, then you are at a good position to implement a system. But I don't think it is really attractive before we develop our industries far better.
I'm in conversation with Miyelani Mkhabela, an economic analyst, with regards to the increase of the national minimum wage. That conversation will continue after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Truth to Power. We are having a discussion with regards to the minimum wage, which is set to be increased from March the 1st. Miyelani, so when looking at it, and of course this was a discussion that we had off air earlier on, you said that the minimum wage only implies to the private industries. And there was a question that was raised with myself and a few of my producers. Why isn't the minimum wage something that can also be contributed towards government? Why does it only have to be with the private industries? Could you give us just the differential perspective with regards to that?
So when you look at domestic workers, you look at farm workers, and then you look at other, it can be securities, or lower paying jobs, you find that they are happening outside much of like government, like at large. The farming industry or the agricultural industry is very huge, and then you find it being one of the key sector that has such a challenge, where employees are not paid well, or you still have employees that are paid maybe even lower than like 3,000 a month or below breadline. So those are sectors that they have to make sure that they prioritize it. It will be very disturbing for the country that government might be employing a person and knowing and under in the type of our government where we come from, oppression. So you will expect each and every government employee not to be earning less like 4,000 or less 4,500. So it will be good when we standardize at that level. But like when you look at the farm workers, you find that government is not involved in that, but at the same time, those people are not members of unions as well, because unions will need those monthly payment, and then looking at those people find that like they are coming from the rural areas, they are earning very less. I remember when I'm coming from the rurals as well. Growing up in those areas, so you will understand that the part of the big farmers, they are located at Limpopo, and you will find that those farmers are not really paying employees through salaries or wages, but they will pay them in kind, whereby when those people go to work, when they come back, they can come back with the products that they are farming, or the products that like are being produced in those farms. So that is a problem, because that employee will be expected to go and sell, whether it's beans, tomatoes, or is citrus. Such an employee coming back from a heavy work will be expected to go back and work. So you understand that person is just like rotating in a very, very difficult like situation. But when they have a standardized employment like rates or wages that will be for employees, let's say 4,000 or 4,500, that becomes attractive, unless it will really need these unions to intervene in those markets, because there's no point of employing a person and the person is really going to work for the whole week and they are not relaxing, because they even knock off very late those farm workers, and you find that like those people are just getting poorer and poorer, and the farmers or the owners of these farms are the ones that are making a lot of money, and they are already exporting these first grade products to the European market or the American market, but the employees are not happy. So there must be a balance, and when I take that like all together, I'm against all companies that are targeting high profits, and then you find that like the salaries are very lower, or salaries are like unreasonable, so there must be a good balance of that, so that our people as well, they are able to see that we are in democracy, and the government as well, a democratic government has to as well intervene and make sure that that is balanced to a particular degree that is reasonable, and not really create poverty, while we are able to see that what we are doing is very wrong.
Well, Miyelani, we certainly hope that the balance could be struck with regards to the high profits and the low salaries, and that obviously conglomerates can come to some sort of an understanding to look after their employees. But Miyelani, I want to talk about obviously farm workers and the entitled wage of 21 Rand 69. It seems as if there's a lot of focus with regards to the farm workers, and that be it so, because you have them and they are the breadbasket of South Africa. They are the ones producing the food for the rest of the country. Do you feel that 21 Rand 69, when it does kick in on the 1st of March, is a fair assessment with regards to the agricultural industry?
South African employees are not paid, Patel. So, and then you can look at the employees that are even already in high position. You can look at our professionals are not even paid to a level where you can compare them with where these multinationals are coming from. So that amount is reasonable to my understanding. And if an employer is not able to employ those candidates for longer hours, it's not as well bad to be paying employees a reasonable salary, and then you release them to leave to their respective homes when whether they have to knock off at 2 o'clock, but you can't really overwork people for a small amount. It's really not good. Like it's not attractive at all. Like when you look at these companies are doing very well, and then they are making production, and at the back of it, you get that employees are not really salaried well. It's not setting a very good reputation, and you find that their children, when they are supposed to go to school now that the results are out for matriculants, those kids are not gonna be going to school because the salaries of their parents can't afford a college or a university. And then you are generating another legacy of poverty. And it's something that are alongside our socio-economic challenges. Poverty and unemployment is something that we must be hard on, and all stakeholders really need to look at this as a priority to all of them. And at the same time, employees that are feeling mistreated at work around the issue of salaries, they really have to report these matters to whether it will be Department of Labor, because a lot of our employees are still earning, through envelope, not really, earning through banks or having, direct salaries that will be going to their bank accounts. So they are just given money, on Friday or end of the month. So you really have to look at this, and because they are afraid to lose jobs, it becomes a problem because those candidates get to be oppressed, and it's like we are operating in apartheid while the country has declared a democracy or freedom, which is not really a realistic position that we need to get into. So all the employers that are not able to employ people, they can just make sure that they prepare themselves, and when they are ready to employ people, they respect human rights, and then you find that like employees are treated well as well, because there's no point of having employees that are not really treated well.
I'm in conversation with Miyelani Mkhabela. We are discussing the minimum wage. Stay tuned. After the break, we will be continuing this conversation. Welcome back to Truth to Power. We're in conversation with regards to the minimum wage, which is set to be increased from March the 1st. Miyelani, what's interesting just before we went into the break is that you said that there has to be a sense of accountability with regards to the employers. Of course, if they are raking in high profits and the employees are not getting the amount that they would like, or the amount that should be, how do I put it this way, seen as what's according to their qualification, what's according to what is written in the contract, how can there be accountability with regards to the employers to make sure that they have the right sort of communication and the right sort of payment to the employees? It seems as if we've just lost communication. Oh, wow, there's Miyelani back there. Miyelani, did you get my question?
So, like with regard to accountability, what what I can indicate is it will be good when all employees are registered in the systems. So from there, whether it's Department of Labor and all the activists that are in that related sector, they will be in a position to work, to work with those employees. That will be a first system to probably be implemented. But when you look on other things, it will be as well good that, employers look on the productivity of each and every employee and remunerate that effectively in a way that the employer and the employee relationship is well managed. Because if an employee is working so hard and then the employer is not really coming to the fore with regard to, remunerating, or there is no fair balance of remuneration, it really becomes a problem as well with regard to productivity. Happy employees are able to be productive as well. So you really need to look on the health, the vitality, and then the well-being of like your employees in a better way, so that they can as well, give as much as they can to your productivity if you are an employer. So it's, these are some of the things that the HR partners or the HR department and the operational department will really have to look at, and then come up with probabilities that are really fair to remunerate, and then to have like the profits as well. So if that balance is fair, I mean, it will really yield as well better, because the productivity of each and every company adds to the gross domestic product of the country. So we need the productivity of the company. We need the the GDP per person, which is, everything, the production that each and every individual is making, because it is aiding on the consolidated GDP of the country. So when that is taking place in a fair way, it will really make a country to be one happy. And when you look on as well on your gross, when we look on the indicator or the broad indicator of a gross national happiness, the gross national happiness does not only look on production, it looks holistically on different like elements. So it will be the production, the health of the people, the education of the people, the happiness of the people at large, and covering almost all the like indicators, balancing, around 8 indicators. So that is a broad scope. We really need to move into that. But I know that it's not going to happen overnight, but we need to start preparing our companies to do good as they are doing business, and then they manage almost their relationship, so that we reduce. We don't really need to see strikes post COVID-19, and a lot of things can be managed if employers cooperate with the needs of the workers. Because the workers now, they know that the companies are reporting high profits. So when the company is reporting high profits and the employees are not getting better salaries, it becomes a problem, because the same employees that are in finance, in operations, they are the ones who knows that the company is reporting high profits, and they are able to tell other employees and galvanize, like if they are mainly unionized to that facet. And it causes a lot of social license to social license to operate, or bad relationship between the employer and the employee.
Miyelani, moving away from the large corporates and moving to our households, domestic workers, their entitlement to a minimum wage of 19 Rand and 9 cents per hour. How important is it, especially for domestic workers, that this minimum wage of this amount is given there? Now, there are times where you will see a lot of the household owners paying this wage, even paying extra for additional working hours. But a lot of times, domestic workers go out of their way. They work more than the required hours, and yet they are underpaid. So how does the accountability factor come in with regards to that?
It is good when all domestic workers are registered as well. And that is the only way. But in these systems, like people, we speak about 7.2 million people that are without jobs. So you'll find that people are taking advantage of these domestic workers as well, because there will be no other area where they will work. So that becomes a huge problem for them. So we really need to mainly register the domestic workers so that it will be easier for them to, not have problems. And it will be the system that is managing that, and they will be paid through a better system. But like when employers of these domestic like workers are still paying them on Friday or end of the month through an envelope, it's not gonna be easy to manage that. And no one will know whether they are paid well or not because there's no system that will be followed, even from Department of Labor point of view. You wouldn't really have that.
Miyelani, the other important point was the workers employed on an expanded public works program. They're entitled to a minimum wage of 11 Rand 93 per hour. Now, of course, public works, it is a governmental department, but it's a governmental department that deals holistically with a lot of projects that involve the infrastructure of the government. So just the importance with regards to that amount for the workers and the increase with regards to that.
Yeah, I think that will add a lot of value because, like, looking at the construction industries,
I have to ask you to just turn it around. I think we just lost Miyelani there. He was just giving us just a breakdown on the expanded public works program, the entitled to of the minimum wage of 11 Rand 93. We will try and get Miyelani back immediately after the break to wrap up the discussion with regards to the minimum wage. Back to Truth to Power. Of course, we had a discussion with Miyelani Mkhabela, an economic analyst, with regards to the minimum wage, which is set to be increased to 21.69 per hour. And of course, what this means with regards to the boost for the South African economy. But unfortunately, the South African economy has taken yet another hit, and another hit in terms of unemployment. Now, unemployment increasing by 32.5%. What that means is that 7.2 million people in the fourth quarter are now unemployed. When we look at that stat, when we look at the population of South Africa, that is a huge crisis, and a crisis that we as South Africa cannot afford. Of course, remember, heading into last year, when the first case of COVID-19 was detected, South Africa was already in a recession. When President Cyril Ramaphosa put South Africa into that lockdown, of course, it did cause a lot of problems with regards to how the economy was going to go ahead and function. Well, I'm just going to read you some of the industries that have taken a hit. Not all the industries have taken a hit, but some of them have taken a hit. So, community and social services, that has increased by 5%. Of course, construction increased by 8%. Trade increased by 1.8%. This is, of course, all trade. We're talking about with regards to retail. Private households, that increased by 6.8%. Transport had increased by 7.4%. Utilities increased by 9.6%. Manufacturing, well, that went up by 2.1%. And agriculture went up by 0.3%. But here is where some of the big hits had come through. Of course, mining went down by 8.4%. Now, we need to remember that, of course, the Christmas time had come in, but also at the same time, there hasn't been a 100% involvement with regards to staff within mines, of course, to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. And that said, of course, mining had to go down. Finance, though, went down by 5%. That was also another big hit with regards to how the economy got itself sort of into this mess as we speak. And we have to wait and see what happens with regards to the first quarter. And of course, Minister of Finance Tito Mboweni had announced his budget speech. So things are going to get quite worse before it goes ahead and gets any better. And of course, we have to hope that when the vaccine rollout does occur, that of course would be able to help the situation. I just want to get with regards to the population group and the unemployment rate with regards to that. And Black Africans till now continue to bear the brunt with regards to unemployment. Currently, it is sitting at 36.5%. The colored population, 25.7%. The Indian and Asian population at 11.8%. And the white population at 8.8%. Now, Black African women remain the most vulnerable with an unemployment rate of 38.5%. Again, COVID-19 has not helped the situation. The country continues to be in a recession, and while that does occur, it really does paint a bleak picture with regards to what is going to happen to our economy. Now, of course, there have been talks of a third wave that could occur in South Africa during the winter months. A third wave would put further strain on the economy and, of course, hurt the GDP quite badly. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with regards to that. And when you're listening to Tito Mbowene's speech, of course, the public service wage bill with regards to what happens there and how it'll also, kind of hurt the fiscus. So we need to wait and see how the country will, figure itself out for the next 10 months to 1 year. And if there can be, a way for South Africa to find itself out of COVID-19 with regard to the vaccines, with regards to things becoming better, then I think we need to hope and pray that it can definitely have its supposed impact with regards to our economy. A functioning economy means a functioning country. But if our economy is not functioning, if our country is not functioning, then I think we are heading for dark times. And again, the figure of 7.2 million people not working really does paint a dark picture of what is going to happen for the country. Well, again, that wraps up our episode of Truth to Power. Of course, discuss the minimum wage. The minimum wage does kick in on March the 1st at 21.69 per hour. And just to give a breakdown of how it's going to work, farm workers are entitled to a minimum wage of 21.69 per hour. Domestic workers, they are entitled to a minimum wage of 19.09 per hour. And workers employed on an expanded public works program are entitled to a minimum wage of 11.93 per hour. Now, of course, in 2018, farm workers were entitled to that minimum wage of 18 Rand per hour and domestic workers to a minimum wage of 15 Rand per hour. Then, of course, we saw the increases that did happen with regards to an announcement by Minister of Employment, Thulas Nxesi, just giving some sort of a boost to the employees. But the question does remain, does it solve the entire, agricultural industry? Does it sort the entire domestic workers industry? And of course, with regards to the public works program, does it sort out that scenario there? So it's going to be really interesting to see when March the 1st kicks in, how this will pan out. Well, this has been another episode of Truth to Power. Do enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. Do stay safe. Even though the numbers of COVID-19 are decreasing, the virus continues to be around, and we need to, of course, make sure that we take care of ourselves to make sure we do not put a strain on our healthcare workers who till today are battling to deal with COVID-19 on various forms of hospitals. From myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the production team, I will see you again, same time, same place next week for another episode of Truth to Power. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.